Hey everybody, good morning. It is day 122 of spiritual healthcare. So welcome. It is good to see everyone. And of course, has happened this week. Of course, we had the presidential debate last night, which didn't seem like much of a debate to me, but that's all right. So anyway, welcome everybody. It is good to be here. And this morning we've got so much to cover today. I think I've got something for you guys that you're gonna really find super interesting, and the things that we can take a lot of lessons from, both symbolically and literally. So it'll be really good. Good morning to everybody. Good morning, Marge. Good morning, Dan. Hi. And Marge says I look fabulous. Thank you so much. Thank you. It is good to see you guys. And so much has gone on this week. I have to tell you guys about a really amazing book that I just finished. And I want to tell you guys all about that, because if you guys can pick it up, you will not regret it. It's amazing. I also wanted to talk today about not only the Dyatlov Pass case, but Nahanni Valley as well, which is up in Canada, and there's been some very, very strange and very similar murders and disappearances there of the kind of the paranormal kind. So I thought we could get into that, as well as the idea of taking a stand, going into a fight. What do you do? What does this all mean on a more universal level? Because both of those cases will have to do with those things. But I hope you guys had a really, really, really good morning and a good week this week. We've been the weather here has been insane. It's been so beautiful. Good morning, Sally. Nice to see you. Nice to see everybody. Nice to see y'all. It was crazy. I don't know if you guys watched any of the debate last night. It was insanity. It was pure insanity. The arguing and talking over people, and it was just absolute chaos. As I say, it wasn't really a debate. It was just chaos. But anyway, the concept of being in battle, of taking a stand, how does that actually translate into the field of the paranormal? How does that translate into our day-to-day lives? Because we end up having to, we really end up having to take positions sometimes. And sometimes when it comes to things like the Dyatlov Pass, for example, it was a life and death situation, as well as the Nahanni Valley. I'm just gonna... Do I have my sound turned off? I don't. There we go. Turning off my sound so you don't get bings and whatever. So we're going to talk about those two cases. The first thing I wanted to bring up, though, oh my God, I just finished an absolutely fantastic book, you guys. Fantastic book by Chad Lewis and Kevin Lee Nelson, called Wendigo Lore, Monsters, Myths, and Mysteries. This, I'm telling you, this is an absolute incredible read. This is an absolute incredible read. I got through it relatively quickly. I've been a slow reader lately because I've had so much going on. But Chad Lewis and Kevin Lee Nelson, they have gone above and beyond for this book. It is so in depth. They took a fantastic stance about the Wendigo and its history, as well as a bunch of other really interesting for First Nations spirits, cryptids, and that kind of thing. And the level of information that they were able to find is incredible. The lengths that they went to for this book, you guys, they literally were out in the winter of Canada, because, as I say, the prairies here, we get really cold, at minus 30 camping, minus 30 Celsius camping, and cooking hot tallow and stuff like that over the fire to keep the Wendigo away. I'm telling you, it's absolutely incredible how far they went for information. The resources that they found were absolutely fascinating. It was really, really crazy. There is some pretty gruesome tales in here, as well, including tales from the Slave Lake region and Trout Lake, and whatnot. It is definitely not for the faint of heart. If you guys don't have a good stomach, I'm warning you ahead of time. But honestly, it is probably one of the most fascinating paranormal books that I've ever been given, and I'm highly recommending this to everybody. So if you guys check out backroadslore.com, and you guys can get a copy of this, or Chad Lewis's website, of course, as well. Just search Chad Lewis. He's all over the internet. He's an amazing cryptozoologist, but I'm telling you, it's just fabulous. It's fabulous. It's really good. So stepping away from that, I wanted to bring up some really interesting cases that aren't discussed too much, but they've kind of come back into light in around 2019, when Russia reopened the investigation into what they call the Dyatlov Pass. And it was named after Igor Dyatlov, who basically brought a group of students. They were students and hikers from the Ural Polytechnic Institute, and they were all going to be basically going into the wilderness, into this mountain pass, and they were studying. They were doing studies. They were having fun, and everybody was basically, like, they were dressed to the nines. Everybody was prepared. This was not a group that was, not used to being out in the cold. It was, so off they went. So this was February in about 1959, and right at the beginning of February, so it's pretty cold there. And they basically disappeared. They went missing, and their families, of course, they're back at home. They're wondering what in the hell happened. Where are these people? And when the investigation was launched to go find them, and the search and rescue party went to go find them, what they found was terrifying. They ended up locating this group that were in the Dyatlov Pass. They'd set up their tent, and their tent was ripped to shreds. They were found in two separate directions. So on one hand, they were found way out. There was a couple of them that were found way out near the wood line, who were basically in their pajamas. They weren't dressed properly. Some of them didn't even have shoes on. And they were dead off on the one side, no other physical injury. But the other group, the rest of them, which had fled in a different direction, were completely ripped to shreds. Their tongue was torn out. They were ripped limb from limb. Their eyes were pulled out. Like, it was horrible. And they were found just strewn over this lake, and or this sort of stream area. And all the bodies were recovered. But when they examined the tent, this is where things got really interesting. When they examined the tent was actually ripped from the inside out. It wasn't that something had attacked the tent. They had been so desperate to get out, they basically cut the tent open from the inside and ran into freezing temperatures, basically no clothes on. They were terrified. So they basically had their pajamas and maybe their boots. Some of them didn't even have their boots on. They just bolted. So, the Dyatlov Pass. It was immediately blamed on the local First Nations people right away. They said, they were, these people were hunted. It was a territory dispute or something like that. And of course, the Aboriginal people there basically said, this, hell no. And if you guys think that that's what this was, you guys are crazy. You've got to start thinking bigger than that. So what they ended up, they ended up beginning to theorize and ponder the idea that this actually might have been something a little bit more to the cryptid paranormal side, when they discovered a camera. One of the students, of course, was taking pictures all day, and when they developed the film, they saw a really weird hulking figure in the back of one of the photographs. Whether it was taken deliberately or not, they don't know. Whether the camp saw it or not, they don't know. But they could see it off in the distance. They found that photo and a second one as well, with it kind of hidden in the background. And the cryptozoologists and people and biologists took a look at the injuries and thought this was done by a great ape. This was a great ape. Could it have been something like the Yeti that was actually attacking these people? So Russia basically reopened the investigation in 2019, and in July of this year, so get a load of this, their conclusion was that they died of hypothermia. That was it. They died of hypothermia. They got ripped limb from limb because of hypothermia. So, all right, not buying it myself. But biologists and whatnot that have looked at the wound patterns and things like that have found that this likely was some sort of large primate. It was just it just fit all of the markers and all of the hallmarkers for that. So in Canada, the sort of the equivalent to the Dyatlov Pass is Nahanni Valley. Okay, so this is in the Northwest Territories. And a fellow by the name of Raymond Patterson in 1927 actually wrote about this in his book, Nahanni, River of Gold, River of Dreams. And he was told, quote unquote, men vanish in that country. And down the river, they say it's a damn good country to keep clear of. And when he started to dig into this and look further in, he discovered that in the early 1900s, there were multiple people that went missing in the Nahanni Valley, similar to the Dyatlov Pass, where it was hikers or gold miners that would go into these areas and then find themselves literally like just torn to pieces, or the bodies would be found later and they would be decapitated. So the Nahanni Valley ended up basically translating into the Headless Valley. Okay. There's a creek there called the Headless Creek. There's another valley called the Dead Man Valley. It got its name perfectly. But people have disappeared down there and really never come back. I was asked about 3 or 4 years ago to do a show. I know it wasn't 3 or 4. It was about 2 years ago to do a show where I was going to be like heading an expedition to Nahanni Valley, and I said there's no way in hell. Mainly because I'm not qualified for that. I don't know anything about wilderness survival, and the only way in and out of the valley is to helicopter in and helicopter out. So if you run into trouble, you better know what to do. I, for one, do not know what to do. So I said, no, this is a bad idea if you don't have a team around you. So it's really interesting. So they have not discovered what exactly is going on there. And the Dene people firmly believe and will tell you straight up that there is supernatural forces that essentially keep people out of this park, out of this nature reserve, and that they call them, I believe it's the winter giants that will that come and eat people and things like that. So very similar to the Dyatlov Pass and the Yeti. And I think one of the things that people don't realize is that the Yeti is not just in the Himalayas. There's been sightings of the Yeti in Canada and all over the place, like northern continents, and they tend to be super territorial. So anyway, it brings the question, it begs the question, when you get a situation like this, and these are such extreme examples, right, of situations where, you've got something that is coming down on you that is aggressive, that is not only fighting for its right to be there, but you end up fighting for your right to be there as well. And no matter what the situations are, I think somewhere in our lives, we are often being either attacked or we are under attack. Something's usually going on in our experience. And what I've found is that sometimes the greater the blessing, the greater the battle. So for example, people who are, maybe for example, are being, pushing their belongings around in a grocery cart aren't necessarily the ones that are targeted by a pickpocketer, right? Or a mugger or something like that. Oftentimes it's the person who looks like they could offer something to someone who's attacking them and wants something from them. And so without the great contrast, we don't often have what somebody else wants, whatever that is. So if you're under attack, there's usually something to be gained from it. Of course, in the Dyatlov Pass incident, assuming it was something like the Yeti or something like that, then, you have to think, okay, maybe this was a territory dispute or something of that nature. But in order to possess, I think on a more practical level, on a more everyday level, in order to possess what Source has given, we kind of have to take a stand about things. And in order to be able to sort of pull it out of the vortex, as Abraham Hicks would say, that we really do have to be able to take a stand and make a decision about what it is that we want, what it is we're willing to risk, and what it is we're willing to put forward. We have to have an investment in what Source has given us. And really, it comes down to the the armor and the type of armor that we move forward with in life. It doesn't mean we have to be all blocked up and against people and paranoid or anything like that. But it's almost like when we hear parents tell their kids, you know, we have to make sure that we've got a thick skin. And we have to be conscious about where we're getting that and how we're implementing it. You know, when, for example, when we know we're healed, oftentimes the symptoms will arrive to challenge that belief. It will challenge the belief that we are getting well or getting better. When we have a bad day, people with you know, that are recovering from surgery or something like that, they know they're going to get better, but it's really hard to internalize that when you've got, you know, pain or you've got a wound or something like that. But we have to be able to see the fact and be invested in the idea that we are getting better and take a stand about that. So when we look at the armor, what I find kind of interesting about this analogy, you know, here we've got these people like out at the Dyatlov Pass and things like that, who of course, in the very depth of of the meaning of the words, they were completely naked. They had no defenses about, you know, what was about to happen, what was going to happen. They were absolutely ambushed. And when we look at some of the current states, we'll look at the presidential debates last night. I'm sure you guys can pull out incidents within your own lives where you can identify moments where it was like everything was fine the 1 second, and then the next second it was like you're getting ambushed. We see a lot of it online. And we just see a lot of it. As I say, the greater the blessing, oftentimes the greater the resistance around you, with people that either want the blessing, don't think you deserve it, don't think you're, you know, entitled to it, they're jealous, whatever. It can flip really quickly. And when we look at that armor, we have to remember that it's the helmet that usually makes all the difference. So I'm the first person to say that I think, you know, we should live from, you know, a heart center for the most part. You know, I think our feelings are guidance. I think they are emotional guidance. I think they tell us whether something's good, bad, ugly, not right, and whatnot. However, the helmet and really represents our head, and it does speak to leadership, right? It really does speak to leadership. And if we completely live in the heart place, if we absolutely 100% live in the heart place and forget the head place, like leading by the heart only, we can't win a battle if we have a heart, if basically we're having a heart experience in a head fight. So we're in an experience where the battle is requiring us to think through things, think through our facts, have a certain amount of knowledge. If we are completely living in the space of our heart, then it's easy to get run over, it's easy to get angry, it's easy to start letting emotions override the experience, and you lose your ground. You lose your ground because you're not living from the head space. You got to protect your head. Head. You need your helmet. You have to protect your head. And often, you know, what we feel sometimes has nothing to do with what we know. And enemies will cut off your head and leave you with your feelings. They really will. They'll cut off your head and leave you with your feelings. So, you know, as I say, I am such a advocate for living from that heart space, from that emotional guidance space. But we cannot forget to protect our heads. So especially when we're under attack from either, you know, somebody who is like a toxic person, someone who leans maybe into the sociopathic spectrum. We've talked about that before. But we tend to not only cancel out our ability to make an argument or to stand up for ourselves or to look at a situation and compare it to past experiences. But what we will also do is end up canceling opportunities because we just aren't feeling it. So this is the other aspect to this problem, is that we will forfeit an opportunity. We will forfeit a great experience or the next level of where we're supposed to go because we're just not feeling well, or we're not feeling it, or we will forfeit that because we don't have the gumption that day or the willpower that day. And your feelings sometimes don't line up with the facts. They won't line up with the facts. So we have to be able to weigh those two very, very carefully. The head space, the heart space. We've got to be very careful about that. Because as I say, if we live completely from here and we don't utilize this tends to get overrun by this, which sometimes isn't such a good thing. You'll see it sometimes in debates, in battles, in arguments, where you'll be watching two people going back and forth, and you'll watch the other person start to override and seemingly swallow the other person involved. And oftentimes they're not talking about facts. They're just degenerate the argument into insults and yelling and whatnot, because they run out of acceptable ways to deal with the argument. And sometimes they have to just step back and be able to say, hey, you know what, you're right, I can change my mind, I might be wrong here. But often the people that are so absorbed in the emotional side of things, they can't do that. They can't separate the feeling that they're having from what's going on in their head, and it becomes just a tornado, absolute tornado. Some toxic people use this as an advantage as well. And I think this is something we have to differentiate. So one of the components of toxic individuals, and you'll see this both in your life, within politics, within all of the different arenas, is that the overriding of somebody else, in which looks like anger, which looks like just, an explosion, can often be a tactic to just disable or shake up the other person, because it's really easy to lose your place when you've got someone who's all over the place and freaking out. So at that point, what it does is it puts the other person in a position where they will say whatever it takes to just get that person to shut up. They will do whatever it takes. They will cut out of their tent and run. No matter what conditions it is, they will cut out of that tent and they will run. And whether it's up to speed with the current conditions or not. So just like in a place like the Dyatlov Pass, here you've got people who literally they cut and run because it was so explosive, it was so terrifying. They had to cut through the tent, ran out with no shoes, no clothes, no nothing, into -30 weather. And this can happen to us on such a symbolic level when we have somebody who is freaking out or putting pressures on us or intimidating us. Then we often will turn around and just like, okay, you know what, you're right, I'll do it. You start throwing excuses and just, whatever it takes to get that person to calm down. And that's the tactic. And when they do calm down, you kind of go, oh, thank God, it's over. Oh, thank God, it's over. But ultimately, peace at any price is not peace. That is not peace. All it's done is taught them how they can behave the next time to get you to do what they want. So all it takes is okay, I have to ramp it up to this level in order to get these people to do what I want them to do, or get this partner, or get this child, or whatever it is. It's really, really interesting, but it's a tactic that we often see played out again and again. So I think one of the main things when we're dealing with a situation like this is asking ourselves, can we separate what we feel from what we know? And where does it line up and where doesn't it? So what I wanted to offer to you guys this week, as we sort of, like, of course, moving forward in the political arena, we're moving forward in, all sorts of areas in our experience. Of course, things are reopening, and, relationships are kind of rocky. I think a lot of people are seeing others' true colors over the last little while. It's very interesting. People who have, come into a friendship or something like that, and as the quarantine is kind of winding down, in some areas, of course it's ramping up in other areas, but I think people are starting to see the true colors of other people. And I think this is where we have to really be careful and realize that we really do have to separate what do you feel from what you know. And when you see tactics like this, be able to step back, be able to step out of it, and start to have a head experience along with the feelings and the emotions, because the feelings and your emotions are really, they are your guidance system. But being able to sort those out and where they come from, it takes the head place. It always, 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 always takes the head place. And actually, what's been really interesting when I was reading Wendigo lore, there was multiple cases in here that reflected exactly what I'm talking about, where you had a mixture of cultural beliefs and cultural conditioning, with the reactions, the gut reactions, the instinctual reactions, the fear responses from people who were so terrified of seeing the Wendigo or becoming Wendigo, that they basically would, they would kill their loved ones. They would, of course, rally together, almost like in the Salem witch trials, where, if somebody believed that someone was casting spells or doing that kind of thing, it became, an explosion of anger and fear and frustration and all of these things, and somebody usually ended up dead. And the Wendigos in some areas was similar to that, but not always. Not always. And when you got the people who were able to make a good case that there was something really weird going on, man, do you stop and take notice. Man, do you stop and take notice. And I think that's one of the main things with this, is that we either will, living from that space, you can create a lot of good and you can create a lot of damage. So, and oftentimes it's the head that will separate those two things. So we have to make sure that we're plugged in and using that. I got a great segment to read to you guys from Faith in the Valley today. And I fell in love with this little passage because I think it relates a little bit to what we've been talking about. So check this out. Abuse is abuse. There are many forms of abuse, but at the core, they are all the same. A violation of your divinity. Sometimes it is hard to determine exactly what is abusive and what is not. Just for the record, let's be clear. There is verbal, mental, emotional, physical, sexual, and spiritual abuse. They take the form of words, silence, actions, non-actions, suggestions, recommendations, and overt displays of an unloving nature. So get a load of that. Hear that one, you guys. They take the form, I'm going to read this again, of words, silence, actions, non-actions, suggestions, recommendations, and overt displays of an unloving nature. They result in your feeling sad, ugly, worthless, ashamed, guilty, and at fault. If you're in a relationship trying to figure out whether or not you are being abused, trust your first thought, you are. Even if you're not, the fact that you have to ask means that you are in trouble. You're in trouble. Yeah, agreed. Totally agreed. But anyway, everyone, I wanted to let you guys go with our peace affirmations coming into the next weeks here of the crazy that's going on, especially in the United States right now. So much happening. So I want to send you guys off with some peace affirmations. Everybody take a breath. I am a channel of peace and well-being, and my need for peace is abundantly met. I unconditionally accept, love, and appreciate myself and who I am. I recognize and am grateful for the abundance that is constantly flowing into my life, which I can choose to allow or not. I feel with every breath a sense of peace and love. I help others by maintaining and tending to my connection with Source as much as possible. This well-being is accessible to me, even in a sea of uncertainty. And at this moment, all is well. I'm able to liberate myself from my past and live with peace and serenity. I can see and appreciate all the beauty and abundance of the life around me. I'm able to embrace love while letting go of fear. And I find peace with the soothing silence of my inner being. And everybody take a breath. Thank you guys so much for this morning. I am going to be posting a link to Chad's book, Wendigo Lore, as well as some more information on the Dyatlov Pass and Nahanni Valley. So you guys can take a read of that. They are fascinating. So fascinating. I highly recommend you look into it. The case, I mean, we only touched on a little bit of it here, but oh my God. Oh my God, it's so good. It's so good. Marge is saying, I needed your wisdom today. Thank you. Thank you guys. You guys inspire it, and I am so thankful to be able to do this every week. I will see you guys next Wednesday on Spiritual Healthcare. This will be uploaded to youtube.com/EntitySeeker later today, as well as EntitySeeker.ca. And I will see you guys next week. Bye, everyone.